Che cazzo stai facendo? Vai via da qui. Yeah, you heard me right. I'm cussing in Italian, or at least I pretend to. And we talk a lot with our hands, aren't we? Yeah, because that's a stereotype, right? That's what you know about them Italians. Yeah, and all of you Italians talk like that, right? Well, maybe not. And maybe not all of them do that, and maybe not all of them sound as aggressively uneducated as I just did. So careful with those stereotypes about people. And today we're going to look at those from La Bella Italia. Yeah, sure, we use the hands south of the Alps, but do we really know how to? And do we really know what all of that means? Let's check it out.
Welcome to Two Chaps, Many Cultures.
In an increasingly globally connected world, it is vital to possess the essential skills of cultural intelligence.
Listen along as we present the topics, tips and strategies you can use to develop the power of cultural understanding in your personal and professional life. Here are your hosts, Christian Höferle and Brett Parry.
Ciao amici, bentornato a Two Chaps, Many Cultures, due ragazzi e tutti le culture, I guess. My Italian sucks. Welcome back, everybody. And see, my name even changed. I'm Cristiano. Oh, what did I do? Am I becoming Italian? I don't know. No. And should we continue doing this and making a caricature of people's communication styles? What do you think about that, Brett?
I don't know. You know, I don't know if there's an equivalent for Brett in Italian. Bretto. I don't know. I don't even know what that is. But, I first of all, I had a question. Actually, it came to mind when you were doing that. Why do we call it stereotype? If it is a one single-minded caricature of a certain group of people, why wouldn't we call it monotype? That's just something I hear, but what do you think?
We should have explored that before we went live.
We probably should have explored that. So anybody who's listening out there, please, as we always say, subscribe, hit that bell. And, of course, you don't have to do that to do this, but you can let us know. Why do we call it stereotyping? But let's not go too far down that rabbit hole. Let's talk about what we're doing today, and that's exactly what we've started off with, is throwing out there a few of these stereotypes that we have about a particular culture, in this case, Italy. It's a very popular culture in the world, and everybody has their idea of what an Italian might sound like or look like, and what food they eat, all of those kind of things exist in a lot of the world, because Italians have found their way in a lot of the world, even my home country of Australia. Back all the way back to the 1600s, they tagged along with the Dutch and went there and mapped with the missionaries in Indonesia. They mapped the northern parts of Australia, and that came from an Italian. He sent it back to the Vatican, trying to get them to, come on, let's go down. This is a great place. It's sunny, and forget about the snakes and the spiders and all that. They'll get over that. but this
Australia.
Yeah. But then, fast forward into, the 1800s, when we had the gold rush. We had a lot of Italians coming for the gold, chasing riches in Australia. And of course, then later on, when we had in Australia the populate or perish policy, where we were literally paying people to come to Australia, the poor people, and it really was usually the peasant farming community, were offered chance to get passage at a very highly subsidised rate. They made their way to Australia, and they found their ways into places like the cane farming in the north and things like that. And of course, back then, just like there is in all of these waves of immigration that came through my country, as an example in Australia, prejudice and stereotyping, and this was this perception of Italians, and they were coming to steal our jobs, and they were coming to bring their maybe some of their networks and their reputation around how strong the family was, and the family has connotations again with certain stereotypes of Italy. This is a very well-known stereotype that existed in Australia, and of course, fast forward when I grew up around a lot of Italians, and the food, they brought their wonderful food, and of course, what else do we think of Italians? Coffee. So the coffee, the cafe. And of course, that's something that's unique in Australia. When people go there, they think, why would Australians have such a coffee culture? Came from the wonderful Italians. So, stereotyping.
Wherever the Italians went, they left a mark. And very often I would argue, to improve wherever they went. They brought something that didn't exist there. And I think, and we're doing this program from the comfort of our U.S. American homes. Italians left a huge mark on the Americas as well. In fact, the Americas are called America because of an Italian. Amerigo Vespucci, right?
Go figure.
So, there are some arguments to be made about the positive influences, largely positive influences, that Italian culture has brought across the globe. And I just corrected myself. Italian culture, well, is there more than one? Perhaps there is. And most Italians will tell you that they're not a homogeneous culture, even though we might think of Italy as this monolith of pizza and pasta and very expressive nonverbal communication. And yet, if you look at Italian history and how the country is made up until the Risorgimento in the 19th century, Italy was split up like a big quilt, like a mosaic consisting of so many different puzzle pieces.
Like a pizza, perhaps? Like a pizza?
Right. And the languages spoken across the Italian peninsula isn't always the same. You go down to Sicily, you go to Sardinia, you go to Milan, or you go to Napoli, or you go to, go to Bari, and people will speak different forms of Italian. Some would even argue it's a different language. So here's where I go back even further in history. And some of you who follow internet memes, you may have come across this in recent months. This question of how much time do men, particularly men, spend thinking about the Roman Empire? Well, you should be thinking about the Roman Empire to understand this, because 2000 and so years ago, Italians, or the Romans, conquered much of the Mediterranean world and beyond, in Europe, in Northern Africa, and ventured even up into what is now the Nordics, or what is now Eastern Europe and the Middle East. And those areas had different languages, different cultures, and they needed to communicate fast. There were people from the empire going to the heart of the empire, because all roads lead where? Of course, they lead to Rome, the heart of the empire. And if you don't speak the language, if you didn't speak Latin, the precursor of Italian, then you needed your whole body to communicate the message. So there is a scientific argument to be made about why is Italian language so expressive, emotionally and physically expressive, because people need to communicate across linguistic obstacles. We use our hands and feet and the rest of our body to relay the message. Il messaggero, I guess. And you brought up the Australian connection with Italy. I come from a country called Germany. We're just across the Alps on the northern side of what is today Italy. Our connection, when I say our, the German-Italian connection, even though it brought about some horrific things in the 20th century, but our connection has been just as old as the Roman Empire. The German culture, some would argue, exists only because of the Roman Empire, because we were immediate neighbors and we learned from each other and we fought each other and we loved each other. And just like there is lots of immigration that came to Australia from Italy, there was lots of immigration going into Germany, especially after World War II. I come from a city, or near a city called Munich, which the Italians call Monaco di Baviera, la città italiana più norte, the northernmost Italian city. If you ever been to Munich, you will recognize the Italian influence in that city, both in forms of architecture, in forms of cuisine, and Italians will confirm, I don't have to say this even though I'm doing it now, but Italians will tell you much more convincingly than I, that the best coffee in Germany, you'll get in Bavaria. It's because of the Italian influence.
There seems to be a thread here with coffee.
And pasta and pizza.
And pasta and pizza.
And then you find lots of Italian immigration that went to the Americas, and Hollywood movies, Scorsese and what's the other guy? Coppola. They made movies that perpetuated some of those stereotypes, sometimes in favor of Italian culture, sometimes more like libel, you could argue, right? Italian culture suffered from being stereotyped probably more than many other cultures around the world. And that's why we began this episode with all the Italians do this and talk like this. All of them? Really? Have you been to Italy? They don't. Just as not as any other stereotype will only hold up this much until you really get closer to it and find out about the reality, the real life of that culture.
Well, of course, before the advent of internet and global news and 24-hour news cycles and things like that, those populations that came and settled these countries essentially were disconnected from their home country. So I've seen this with Greek clients where they'll say, I've come to America and I see Greek communities here and they do things and practice traditions and and it's almost like, this is not what we do now in Greece. This is different, but it's historically been carried on by the immigrant population here, and that can be some source of that stereotype too. Whereas the country moves on, evolves, and the people change, the culture is dynamic and it's not a monolith. But the new people that have come here and historically settled want to carry on those traditions, that connection. So they may actually, in their own, by their own interests and by their own actions, promulgate some of those stereotypes. So that's and you told me that an interesting connection between Bavaria and Italy. It's an interesting connection there, and that's just one example of that. So let's think about, when we do work with people, we're obviously applying some of our tools that we use, like GlobeSmart, and we think about the profiles of a country, and this, of course, imbues the connection between communication styles, like we talked about, the more expressive hand gestures, the more high context, use of context in an Italian language like Italian, and then the attitude to work and the attitude to all that. So where do we find that, mate? Where do we see here Italy falling in that?
Well, I think it's easily misconstrued as the impression that one might think, because of their emotional and physical expressiveness, Italians have a very direct style of communication. And if you look at the data, if you look at the available information we have in cultural comparison frameworks like GlobeSmart, Italy ranks, well, dead center, more leaning on indirect communication styles. So the language itself, the words and the tonality used is not very direct compared to, let's say German, Dutch, English communication style or American English communication styles. And yet the directness that we perceive is probably transported in the nonverbals, right? If there is direction given or emotion or threats or disagreement or disinterest shown through nonverbals, that could easily give us the impression that the communication style is quite direct. The words are not so much, the body language is. And I've heard it said by Italians that, well, some things are not to be said. That implies not to be said verbally out loud, and yet we do say it with the nonverbals, right? So the body language in Italian culture and Italian communication style does what the actual verbal communication doesn't do. The directness that is not as pronounced in the verbal communication Italian language is added to it by the nonverbal, which can be confusing if you go there for the first time and you come from a culture where you show emotional restraint and you find that irritating. I found that quite fascinating. I still do. And those of you who know me and who've traveled with me know that my happy place, or one of my happy places in the world, is a part of northern Italy that's called 𝙈𝙖𝙣𝙮, which has only been Italian for about 100 years. Before that, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Habsburg Empire. And after World War I, the winning parties ruled that this portion of land should be given to Italy, and it became part of the Italian state. And Italian government since started to italicize it. So it's a bilingual area up in the mountains in northern Italy. And it's fascinating. Even those parts of the population that speak German first, they all also speak Italian. It's a completely bilingual area. But even the German native speakers in that area are using Italian body language, even when they communicate to me in German. They will look Italian in the way they communicate. Case in point, that proximity creates relatability, and then we assimilate and we absorb each other's communication and behavioral patterns.
Yeah. And those, and of course you've told me about that wonderful area, and of course that is the connection with food too, right? The gastronomic expression that comes from a mix of cultures like that. And and we think about this as maybe Italians as like a bit of an Epicurean culture, so they love the creative arts, and the creative arts makes its way into fashion, makes its way into the food, makes its way into the cars that they produce, the Ferrari and the Maserati. These kind of
Don't discount the Lancias and the Fiats. Come on,
I'm not diminishing them at all.
Yeah,
absolutely, and
even the little Vespa.
The Vespa too, right? The Vespa, but still, Vespas, they are a beautiful machine. They may not be exactly fast, but they're efficient, and they are a beautiful machine, and people collect them and spend, and it's a representation. If you see a picture, this is how strong this is for us as humans. You see a picture of a Vespa, and you immediately go to Italy. You immediately kind of put that connection. This is how strong these kind of things are. Yeah. But I know that you love a character who unfortunately is no longer with us, but that described his idea about what he discovered in Italy, right?
I would call him the patron saint of interculturalists, or my spirit, not animal, my spirit being, I guess. Yeah. Anthony Bourdain, the late Anthony Bourdain, who, and I'm quoting from his book, he talked about Italy and specifically about Rome. And he wrote, "To me, it's not the big things they tell you about, the sculptures, the imposing squares and buildings, the monuments, though they are amazing. It's the little things, the tiny details, the improbable awesomeness of every little damn thing." Yep, and I agree with you, Tony Bourdain, because once you get to know Italy at that level, and this is what Brett and I've been talking about on this program since we started, culture isn't a monolith. It's in the nuances. It's in the fine-grained details where you find the awesomeness in every little damn thing. And you will realize that how people use their body to communicate transports emotion, positive and negative. It is a form of expression that can be so beautiful if we learn how to read it and listen to it with our whole being. And then it becomes more than a stereotype. It becomes understanding between people. And that's what we're both here for, aren't we?
We certainly are. And okay, so is that like a pizza where you just throw a bunch of ingredients and the mix?
You started it. Oh, you said a bunch of ingredients. Oh, you mean like All the kitchen sink stuff?
That's right, and that's,
I
I know. See, and that's what we think of in my country. Like, if you think of pizza, some cultures think, yeah, you're just throwing a bunch of food on a piece of kind of bread-like substance, and yes, you do that to Italians, and of course they will go bananas because pizza is an art, and it is
bananas on the pizza.
No bananas.
And while we're at it, no pineapple.
Oh,
I know.
no, okay, we're gonna have a problem here. We have a problem. I'm a pineapple pizza guy. So I'm Australian. I'm a pineapple on hamburger guy too. So maybe it's just something to do with
Not opposed to pineapple at all. I think I've talked to Italians who would agree with you.
Right.
I think it's not the tradition.
No.
Maybe 4 ingredients tops. You need some red sauce, you need some mozzarella, you need maybe some prosciutto, some olivas, maybe I don't know, anchovies.
Yeah. Maybe.
Pineapple.
I'll give you that one. There is no way in the world I would order pineapple on a pizza in Italy for the fear of being excommunicated and extracted.
Maybe there is such a thing. Tell us. Write it in the comments.
Yeah.
Show us which pizza place you've been to in Italy that serves pizza with pineapple. I'm sure there is. I will be surprised if there is.
Okay, well, maybe tourist areas. But this is it. I think that was very profound, mate. I think that is something we can almost end on because just what Christian said, right? This is the beauty and drawing on Anthony Bourdain's attitude wherever he went in the world. There is so much magic to be found in not only the physical intricacies of a culture, but also just the spiritual and the linguistic and the relationship side of things in a country, especially as complicated and with such a long history in a place like Italy. These things, I've been to Italy, you can see them everywhere, and if you're attuned, like I think Christian and I are, just from sheer annoying people, we can be a little bit annoying to people because we might just kind of ask random strangers.
Talk about yourself, mate. Don't include me in this.
Hey, listen, I know what you're like too. Don't worry. I've been with you. I've traveled in many parts of the world with you. I know you'll like it too. It's just it's curiosity. It's curiosity to look yourself in the mirror and go, yes, I like pineapple pizza and I love that, but I wouldn't do it here in Italy because look at it's like the complication in the simplicity. There's one I'm going to throw at you. Look at that. Look at that. It is the beauty of the complication in the simplicity of a pizza that just has 2 or 3 ingredients with a nice, nice cleansing beer, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Beer freddo.
Yeah.
Now, I give you the pineapple pizza if you give me the never ever coffee with milk after breakfast.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll give you that. I don't do coffee with milk anyway, so
for breakfast and cappuccino, latte, macchiato. Sure, for breakfast.
Good.
No cappuccino for lunch or dinner or any time after breakfast.
That's right.
You can have all the pineapple pizza you want.
Yeah. So, stereotypes actually can be valuable in getting a little bit of that protocol knowledge before you go to Italy, and do not get yelled at by somebody behind the coffee counter when you're asking for a cappuccino at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I don't think they will yell at you. They will just roll their eyes and turn around and cuss you out in the cab.
And probably with body language that you don't understand, that would be... yeah, what's it? Perfect. It's great. Well, we covered it all. Have we covered all the stereotypes? I mean, we could sit here all day and blow up stereotypes,
Many of them. I think we should stop here. Otherwise, our Italian friends will send somebody for us. You're done now.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that's it. 2 chaps, many cultures, many variations of cultures around the world where too much culture is barely enough. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and please, as we always invite you to do, tell us what you think. What have you discovered? What magical things have you discovered in Italy? If you've been there, if you've traveled there, we'd love to know, and because probably we'd love to go there and explore those for ourselves. That would be fantastic. We would highly appreciate it. So that's it. Another episode in the can for another week. Come back next week. We'll be back again. Same bat channel, same bat time. Well, it is bat time. It's like Tuesday, every Tuesday or so. And we wish you a very good week. And any final thoughts, my friend?
Arrivederci, ci vediamo.
See you guys. Bye.